All right, everyone said, I'm going to do the briefest introduction for Rick Arenas as possible. Rick is our keynote, so here's Rick Arenas.
Yes, this is true. My name is Rick Arenas. I am an associate professor at the University of New Mexico. And this is my first time ever being at a French conference. Which makes me wonder what the hell's wrong with me. Like, why have I not gotten one of these? Because this has been really cool. It's been awesome. And so I'd like to extend my gratitude to Lee for giving me the opportunity. So today I'm going to be talking about slaying the beast, the Iceberg Beast, actually. And you're probably curious as to what an iceberg beast is. So, and it's kind of early in the morning, so I'm going to kind of stretch your brain a little bit, and I'm going to start out with a couple of riddles. So the first one, hopefully you can read that, but if you can't, it says, you throw away my outsides, and then you cook my insides. Then you eat my outsides and throw away my insides. What am I? Yes?
Corn on the cob.
Boom! She nailed it! Very good. Alright, we're stretching our minds.
Throw away the outside, you eat the inside.
Stretching our minds a bit. Alright, riddle number 2. I eat everything in my path, but if I drink water, I die. That one was too easy. Fire, nailed it. Alright, so our minds are starting to think outside the box. That's good. Alright, so riddle number 3. I like it when you don't talk about me. I become stronger when you struggle against me. I grow when you hate me. Avoidance is my favorite snack. What am I? So I've heard a couple. Stuttering is one good answer. That's not the correct one. Yes. Shame, that's a good answer too, but it's not the one I'm looking for. Fear, that one's good too. I'm glad that you guys have not gotten the correct answer because it's the Iceberg Beast. Probably one that you've never heard of. And I'm glad that you have not heard of it because it came out of my own mind. And if you had heard of it, that'd be a little weird. So we're going to be talking a lot about this Iceberg Beast. So what could this thing be? So I'm imagining that probably all of you have probably heard of the analogy of the iceberg. Is there anybody who has not? All right. If you still, I'm going to read and just kind of explain it. So it kind of was this idea that was first introduced by Joseph Sheehan around 1970, I think. So it's been around for like 50 years. Long, long time. And so it's this idea that the observable part of the stuttering behavior is the part that's above the waterline. And it's the only part that other people are able to actually observe. But the bigger part, by far, is all of this stuff that is below there. So all this like kind of fear and shame, all of this anxiety, all those negative thoughts. So this is a great analogy. It's super helpful, especially for those of you who don't actually stutter. It just gives you a view that there is a lot more to it than just those overt behaviors. And it is helpful for people who stutter as well, because it kind of starts to pull apart that there is a distinction between the behavior and those kind of thoughts and those feelings and those attitudes. So it is definitely a strong, good like analogy. But as I kind of have been giving this thought over the years, there's this part of it that just doesn't seem like it captures all of it. And so this is where over time I started to come up with this idea of the beast. And he is this gnarly, not good creature that lives in the bowels of this iceberg, down at the very, very, very bottom. And he's nasty. He has pull and sway over you in ways that you do not want. And so why would this be helpful to even have this idea of this iceberg beast? Well, I think it's helpful because it allows us to give the problem a name. And so you could call it Sam. I don't know if you have anybody that you don't like, or you could call it whatever you want. I personally call it the Iceberg Beast because it kind of lives down there, and it's a beast. It's bad. And it's good to give it a name, because then you can start to actually describe it. Like, you can get to know it. And you can start to identify what types of things are going to, like, what does it actually like? Like, what types of things make it stronger? What makes it kind of thrive? Or what things actually make it grow or shrink? So it gives you, like, this way to kind of pull it away as its own little, as its own entity. And then you can start to identify how is it actually able to influence you. In what ways is it able to kind of pull at you and tell you to do things that maybe you wouldn't actually normally want to do. So it's still part of that whole idea of the iceberg, but it's more kind of the core thing that may not be expressed as like a thought or a true emotion, but it's still kind of there. So it kind of provides this further distinction between your behavior, your thoughts, and your emotions. So I kind of think of the beast as a cohesive collection of beliefs about stuttering that we allow to negatively impact how we live our lives. So it's not necessarily even a thought or anything that you always necessarily feel, but it's just there. And it's always kind of playing some kind of role in how you live your life. So in this whole convention, the whole idea of it is change right now, right? So change is what we all kind of aspire to have. But what I think a lot of us don't fully grasp oftentimes is that we're constantly changing. That no matter what it is that you do, you're still going to change. So, like, whether you came to this conference or not, you're going to change. But the point, though, is what kind of change do you want to actually make? And if you don't have a way to kind of know where you want to go, then that change oftentimes is not going to be positive. It is just going to continually get kind of spiral and get harder and harder. So being able to identify this beast, it kind of gives us a directed target. Like, what is it that we actually want to change? Or what aspect of this particular problem do we want to identify and target? And so I use these words like target and campaign, like kind of warlike almost, because I really feel like for the kind of change that the majority of us want, that's kind of what it takes. And it's not anything about the stuttering behavior, because that's okay. But this kind of beast is something else, something that actually is able to sway how it is that you live your life. Alright, so how is it that we start, so if we're going to target this guy, how is it that we actually start to identify him? And so one way that you can kind of start is whenever you kind of have this feeling or this thought that I can't do that because I stutter, and then you actually don't do whatever it is that you believe that you can. So that's one way to start to kind of identify, like, what is this beast and how is it starting to swing me? Or I avoid, anytime that you start anything by saying I avoid, then that's probably not, that's starting to get at a description of the sway of this beast. So if I say I avoid words, or I avoid certain sounds, I avoid talking on the telephone, I avoid talking to Susie. All of these things are kind of good signs that there is this thing at work inside of you, that there is something else that you would rather do. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to say, I avoid it, because there is this other thing. But you're being swayed by this. Or if you start to say, I'm worried about the future because I stutter. That's starting to get at the influence of this beast. So all of these things are kind of related to this idea that the beast is kind of having some control over how you live your life. And as the beast kind of grows, it can kind of start to interfere with your story. It becomes more of the main character as opposed to you. Like, you're not choosing how it is that you want to actually live your life. So all of these things I've described here could actually be described as like thought that you have. But oftentimes, it's not always like a thought. Like you can't always put your words or any notion to it. But it just feels like this weight. Like you just feel like you're tied down. And there's a weight that is just kind of there. And it just kind of looms and you can't describe it. You don't even know. Oftentimes, you aren't even aware it's there. But it's just kind of like weighting you down. So let's just kind of, like all this is kind of gloomy. I know, just trust me, it's going to get much better. Everybody's like, good God, this guy's awful. Trust me, it'll get better. Like, it's going to get much like happier and like, much more like uplifting. But first, we have to identify what does this beast eat? Like, what makes him grow? So one of the big ones, I think, is when you hate him. If you hate the beast, that is just great fuel for it to just kind of thrive. It really is a great little snack. Or if you struggle against it. Or if you deny its role. Like you can't start to target anything that you're not acknowledging is actually playing some kind of role. Huge one, not talking about it. So completely just like closing down and not expressing how it is actually impacted. All of that can lead to holding in how you feel, which then can lead to things like isolation. And the biggest snack for me was, or is oftentimes too, is avoidance. So anytime that you avoid things, that's that beast being in the way of what it is that you want to do. Otherwise, that word avoidance just wouldn't fit. And just overall, just preoccupation. Like, it's just kind of on your mind. It is like that weight that you're not even really aware of, but it's just there. And that can oftentimes lead to just this like idea that it's just kind of hopeless. Even more doom and gloom. All right, it gets better. So, but what's interesting about all of these things here is there typically things that you're actually acting on. Like you're actually actively not doing things that you want to do. Or it's a belief. But it's not really oftentimes like a thought or an emotion. So it seems to me, and I hope that you can kind of say that this iceberg is kind of split if you look down below. There's kind of this part in the middle, which is kind of the land of the thoughts and the feelings. And then down below is this land of the beliefs and the actions. And this is where the beast lives. This is where this beast is kind of hiding and lurking down there. But if you look at what he is able to eat, he is only able to eat those beliefs and those actions that you actually choose to do. He really can't feed off just the thoughts or the emotions. And it doesn't appear that he can access the stuttering behavior, which is way up there. So I think once I started to kind of get this and start to grasp that really what makes this beast grow isn't those things that we oftentimes are kind of talking about or targeting. So even if you change the stuttering behavior, but you don't deal with a lot of that other, it's not going to change what the influence that the beast actually has, because it's down there and it's still trying to exert its like influence as long as those beliefs and those avoidance actions are still there. So once I kind of came to that, it was like this: what? This can't be. Like the beast grows on every time I have a block. That's got to be what feeds it, right? And so, but it doesn't, to me, that's not the way that I've come to kind of view it. Because I don't know how many times I've seen many people who stutter a lot, very, very much, but they live their lives completely free. Like they do whatever it is that they want, and it doesn't play a big role in their lives. On the flip side, I've seen like many clients in our clinic who I've maybe heard have a disfluency twice, and I've talked to them for years. But it impacts them like you would not believe. They avoid context, they have changed jobs, they have done everything to avoid. And so, for them, their beast is very powerful and very, very strong, but nobody would even have any idea that they actually do it. So it doesn't seem that the beast really even cares that much about the overt behaviors. And it doesn't, oddly, it doesn't seem like it feeds off our thoughts or how we feel at any given moment. That kind of took me a while to kind of start to grasp that. But what it starts to feed on is if those thoughts and those feelings aren't expressed. Because when they're not expressed, they get stuffed and they stay around and they give weight. Like they start to become like what we believe as true. And once they kind of hang around and become true, then they become a belief, and they trickle down into the land of the beliefs, and the beast just starts to eat at it. It just starts to feed and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what does he not? So he does not eat when we choose, he does feed on when we choose to act on a thought. So, for example, if I have a thought, this talk is going to suck, I'm going to do very badly, and I choose to go to my room and cry. The beast would love it. That would be a thought that I had, that I acted on, or just even a small one. A thought like, I probably won't be able to say my name, so I'm not going to go talk to whomever. Me acting on that thought gives fuel, gives food for this beast to actually grow. He is also able to eat when we choose not to express how we feel, or not to express the thoughts that like we have. And it's because then they just kind of hang around there and they get that weight. And they become beliefs that then trickle down, and then he munches, and he just grows and grows and grows. So that's just kind of a reiteration that holding on to those things is definitely creating an environment for this beast to grow. So the beast kind of grows in this particular iceberg environment. So its growth is pretty independent from the stuttering behavior that we all kind of observe. But it just kind of grows over years and years of being in this particular type of environment where the fuel is there, like where there's a lot of food. So I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about my own journey and just kind of trying to tie it into where and how it is that this beast was growing and getting fuel. So when I was in my wee young years in elementary school, my little beast was pretty fuzzy, pretty nice. He was just there, basically had no influence, but he was there. He was starting to kind of grow. So really, as I started to reflect back, in the elementary school years is kind of when I started to like recognize from like hindsight that it was starting to kind of grow and starting to exert influence. So a couple memories that I have very clearly is I would always avoid having to read aloud in class. Like we'd be around and it would start to come around and with the Bobby and I'd be like freaking out and I'd be like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I would leave right before every single time. I would avoid it like crazy. And the beast would just start to grow and grow. I remember very clearly, I used to I still am kind of funny, I guess, but I used to like to tell jokes. But then I remember a very distinct time around like 4th or 5th grade, I was like, I just quit. I was like, I'm not going to even try and tell a joke, because I can't nail that like timing. I can't nail that punchline. And so from there, it just kind of grew and grew. Into the middle school years, the beast is getting a little bit uglier, a little bit more snarly. It's still kind of cartoonish, not too bad. But the avoidances did continue to kind of grow and grow. And this is kind of at that age when I started to become pretty closed off. So I just wasn't able, I didn't have the tools, I didn't know how to express all those challenges that I had. So I just stuffed it. Just put it down there, and I just didn't deal with it. And everything was all good. And I just was, fine, it's all good. Everything is good. And then high school came along. The beast is growing. He's on there somewhere. It's a little bit dark, but he's not full grown yet. It's not too snarly. But I was still completely emotionally not present. Like, I literally didn't cry from probably the age of 14 to like 28. Like, literally, I got to a point where I was just like, nope, I was completely done. And I spent a lot of energy trying to compensate. So I was like, all right, if I can't talk, if I can't do all these other things, I'm going to exert every energy I've got into all these other things. And so he was swaying me even when I wasn't even talking or doing anything related to communication. And this is when I started to grow these beliefs that, you know, like the future is probably not going to look so hot. Like, this is not good. And eating, and of course, the avoidances grew and grew and grew. So just a little anecdote, and I'm not trying to brag or anything, but it was pretty cool. When I was a junior in high school, we won our state championship, and I was the place kicker. We were down by 2 points with 21 seconds left, and I kicked the game-winning field goal. Riding high. And so a couple days after that, a reporter called, and like I wasn't home. So my dad, like, when I got home, my dad goes, "Hey Rick, you know, like this reporter called, he wanted to do a like interview. Like, you just have to call him back." And I'm like, "No." And I refused. Like, it was even though that was like such a big moment, I refused to even be part of it because I would avoid it. But the guy called back anyway, and so I did the interview. And look at that young man. And like, I remember talking on the phone, and it was awful. I mean, I was just like trying not to let him know that I had any challenges with my fluency. And so it was interesting. Like, I remember the call. I remember it not being pleasant. But like, as I scanned this, I saw this part because they always ask you these kind of these cool questions, like, what's your favorite part of school? Like, what do you like to eat? Blah blah. And one of the cool questions was, what's your favorite movie? And I said none. But that wasn't true. I remember that moment clearly. I wanted to say Caddyshack, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to. So I said none. And so I've got documentation of how much I was avoiding it. It also became clear that they don't really edit because he spelled ketchup the right wrong. Like, that was not my fault. So, I mean, this is just one example of how much of an influence that this beast was like starting to have. And then in my early 20s was really when it kind of reached its like peak. This is when this beast was carrying, he had an arsenal of things, and he was monstrous. He was playing a lot of a huge role. And I was still in denial that it was really playing a role, but I started to realize that I wasn't in control. But I certainly had no idea like what was in control. And I just started to feel pretty hopeless. And of course, I was still very emotionally closed off. And I was starting to make major life choices just because of that. So I chose to go into a career as a computer programmer, which is a great job, and I actually enjoyed it. But I specifically chose that because I thought that I wouldn't have to actually talk a lot. It turns out that was not accurate. You have to talk to a lot of people. You have to actually like learn like what it is that they want. But I was making major choices, and I was really trying to like hide it because I had this belief. I felt that if I exposed it, that my career would just be shot. And so, definitely not a high point of my life by any means. But by my mid to late 20s, I was starting to make a little bit of changes. As you can see, I don't know if you can or not, but the beast is there, but it's shrinking a bit. So I went back to school to pursue a degree in speech pathology when I was like 25 years old. And that at least started me to actually start to talk about it, and that was actually pretty helpful. But what kind of was holding me back was that I was still very focused on that top part. I was very much concentrating only on the behavioral aspect. I went in there. I was like, I'm gonna kick this thing ass. Like I was like, I am gonna go in there. I'm gonna learn these tools. I'm gonna dominate it. There's nothing that's gonna stop me. And for many years, like that made it almost worse because then I was just like, I felt guilty. I felt shame. Like like I can use these tools like in the clinic, but I can't like use them when I talk to anybody else anywhere else. And I just felt awful. Like it was really not helpful. Even though I was starting to even believe that I was like okay with it. Like, oh, now I'm talking about it, so I'm kind of okay with it. But I was still emotionally completely not there. Like I was not able to really talk about how it was impacting me. I was able to talk about the behavior, totally fine. I was like concentrating on that. And like I was pretty open about that. Like I wasn't avoiding a lot of things anymore, but what I was avoiding is how it was actually impacting me. So finally, my little guy is back. So not probably until about on my mid-30s or so is finally when some real changes actually. So here's where things start to get a little bit lighter, a little bit happier. The beast is a little bit gone. Oddly, what kind of pushed me over that edge, like why I was spinning my wheels for a long time, was that I was not able to be vulnerable. I was not able to kind of get into how it was that it had actually impacted me for years and years. I just wouldn't even really acknowledge it. I wasn't even almost aware of it. But what kind of helped me to get over or to kind of grow in that aspect is when I started to have children. Like any of you who are a parent know that it's just like the most powerful thing that you can possibly have. Like the amount of love and fear and anxiety is amplified by like 10,000 times. And so as most adults who have children have probably had that kind of like thought that, oh my gosh, like what do my kids do? And me being in the area of like research, I knew that there was a very strong genetic component. So that was kind of on my mind, but it was like this weird feeling of like I shouldn't even care because I'm okay with it now. Like it's perfectly okay. Like there's nothing wrong with the behavior, but it was challenging for me to square that with this like gut like reaction that I just didn't want my kids to have to go to actually experience that. So what it made me kind of do is it gave me the motivation and the courage to really start to like to look inwards and say, you know, have I really started to even deal with this? And the answer was no. I had been hiding so much of like how I feel, how much it was actually impacting me that I had no idea. And so what I started to realize is that this is when the idea of the beast kind of came about, is that I finally squared away that I would be okay if they do stutter, but I don't want them to be burdened by this beast. And so I wanted to really understand in what way, in what possible way can I create an environment and be a role model to really not allow that type of babies to kind of flourish. And so I finally started to kind of to get a better idea of what it was that I was doing to provide like my own beast, this fuel. And I'm sure you've probably heard these terms, but all of what I kind of came to kind of fell into these three categories of self-efficacy, acceptance, and vulnerability. And I've heard a lot of you, like up here and throughout the conference, also talking about these things, which is great. So these are not new to me, and anyway, like these are very, but I just want to kind of talk about like what these things have meant for me personally, and how I try to keep them on my mind and be very intentional to try to use these as like weapons against this beast. So the word self-efficacy is a little bit weird. It's not a word that we kind of commonly use, and it can be defined kind of in a lot of ways. But I just kind of, how I would describe it is that you actually believe or you feel that you have control, like you feel that you have control over your behavior in your overall environment. So I kind of compare it to if you're riding on a roller coaster and you're trapped in, you have no self-efficacy because you're just you're along for that ride. There's no way that you can change it. There's no way that you can control it. So in that instance, you would be kind of hopeless. Like you don't have any control. So the opposite of that is that you do. So how I kind of try to use that, I try to keep things as plain and as like easy as I can. Otherwise, I get confused and it doesn't really work very well. So like the biggest thing that I try not to do with regard to this category is I just try not to avoid any thing at all due to my stuttering. And that was probably the easiest one out of all of these changes. I was able to actually do that pretty early on, but I think that when you avoid, it is a snap. Like that beast just grows and grows and grows. And it just becomes easier and easier and easier to avoid. And then I just kind of, because I spent so much time trying to learn these tools that I was never ever able to use, I just kind of came to a point where I don't use any tools ever. And I apologize to all this page like a script I thought was but I don't. But I try to monitor, am I struggling? In like FIM, I try not to. So I just try to keep it as easy as I can, just because I just have not been able to really use these tools that well. And they confuse me. I get clouded by them, and I don't like it. So those are the two things that I try to do with regard to that. And they seem to kind of get rid of about 3 of these cookies. They can get rid of this struggling, kind of that feeling of like hopelessness, because you are actually trying to kind of take control, and it gets rid of the cookie of avoidance. All right, so for acceptance, again, that can be a pretty broad term. That can mean a lot of things. But the way I try to use it in the way I understand it that is most helpful for me is I try my best to just observe my experience without any judgment. So the behaviors, my thoughts, my feelings, I try to just acknowledge them. Like, Greg, we're feeling pretty anxious right now. Your stomach is feeling very sick because you have to go give a talk and you're really feeling it. But I'm still able to then say, okay, that's just a thought. That's just how I feel. I don't have to give that any power. Like, it's just kind of there. It's going past. But I'm going to choose to do whatever it is that I want to do. So it kind of pulls away and provides that space in that room to be able to choose to actually act in the way that you want to choose. The other part of that that was really big for me is to really not to deny that this stuttering has had a big influence over me, and it continues to, and I don't deny that. So I just kind of say, okay, yeah, it probably is, and here's kind of, and I try to just be like not getting down on myself, just being like, okay, but in what ways can I have it now? Or like what ways can I still live my life as free as I can possibly be and not deny like what kind of power it can actually have? And by doing that, you start slaying some more cookies. You get rid of denial. You no longer hate the stuttering behaviors. So it's just kind of there. This last one was the hardest for me by far. The vulnerability piece was the linchpin that was holding me back for decades. It was very, very, very challenging. Part of it was I didn't even know what I felt, just because it had been closed down for a long time. But even once I started to, I didn't want to tell anybody about that. I felt like, why would anybody care? I don't want to expose myself. Like, I will look weak. So a big part of that was just like I tried to be okay with doing things that I want to do, even though it may not go well. Like creating a talk about a frickin' iceberg beast. Pretty risky, I would say. I tried to be willing to really express, okay, this is a thought that I have. Like, is this crazy? Like, it's really helpful because once you express it, you can actually get like feedback from others who are like, yeah, that is kind of crazy. But it's okay. But it just helps you to not believe. It allows it to not have that weight and gets pulled down into the land of that beast. And expressing how you feel, that was also extremely challenging. So now, obviously, I'm pretty open about talking about it, but I felt like I was open to talking about it quite a while ago, but I was willing to talk about the behavior. But I wasn't willing to talk about how it was impacted. And so now I try to actually do that as well. And so by doing that, it slashes more cookies, like holding in, let you feel, actually talking about it. But even once I started to slash these things, that preoccupation was still kind of there. It just, it takes time. So what kind of starts to actually starve that big hairy guy is just, it just takes consistent time of trying to afford this vulnerability, this acceptance, and this degree of self-efficacy. So I highly doubt that my little guy is going to ever be completely gone. Like he still always has the potential to like eat more and to come back. But as of right now, he's relatively cute. Like I can talk about him, I can hold him. He's not too bad. So the three takeaways that I want you to kind of hone in on are these three. That these three, I really believe, are the key ingredients for positive change. So you're definitely going to change regardless, but if you really want to kind of go in that positive direction that you probably do want to go, these three things are, like, in my opinion, critical. They're very, very, very important. And even if it's not about change, or if you're not even a person who's stutters, these things are just good to just live a full life. To just, and so they're huge to actually having healthy relationships. Like once I started to tear down those walls, like my marriage was, I was like, oh, this is what a marriage is. Like, this is actually pretty good. So it just like, I was so close off that it's hard to make like a connection. So that was pretty nice. If you would be interested, I wrote a little article in this Stuttering Foundation newsletter called A Father's Advice. You can kind of Google it if you'd be interested. It like might be a like helpful resource for being able to talk with your kids. All of those can be kind of slammed into those three categories. I just didn't actually talk about them like in that way, but so I have a challenge for those of you who stutter. I really genuinely feel that it is helpful to kind of to give this thing a like name and to kind of give this quite a bit of thought and start to identify, like, what is it that actually makes it grow? Like, what types of things are you doing that kind of contribute to that thing growing and actually having more pull over the things that you want to actually do, and how is it actually influencing? And so, and then just try to be as intentional as you can to see how, of those three categories, what does that actually mean for you personally? And like, what ways are you not able to kind of do those things? And then for the parents and the other allies, I challenge you to actually talk to your friends or your children, like, and kind of use this kind of framework to be like, I'm not as concerned about how your day was in terms of your fluency. Like you don't have to blow that off. But what is kind of more important is trying to talk openly about how has that thing been able to actually influence you. Like, in what way is that thing actually playing a role that you don't like? Just for your own growth, it's good to just be a good role model, and to actually try to create an environment where those three things can actually flourish. And so I kind of have that to model things in your own. All right, so I'm going to conclude with one last riddle. So the thing is, I can do anything I try to do. I become stronger every day that I live my own life. I grow when I accept who I am. I flourish when I share my inner thoughts and feelings. Who am I?